This is a little new show that we call Living Room Sports, and you're in your living room, huh?
Well, I'm kind of on the border of the kitchen and the living room. It's all one big room.
Your home away from home, though, Eric, is now Durango, Colorado, right? You love that place.
As often as possible.
Well, I was sitting on the back porch last night listening to some music, and it occurred to me the one thing that I miss more than anything in this crazy summer is my soundtrack of summer, and that would be Eric Nadel on the radio calling Ranger games. I know there's a ton of fans who probably feel the same way. I mean, it's part of the soundtrack of summer, listening to baseball on the back porch. How much are you missing?
I miss listening to it also. You know, I get a few games off, and when I do, I have it on in the background too. It's really odd. The whole thing is so strange. And when it starts up again, it's going to be strange. But, you know, being in what should be the middle of the season right now, right around the All-Star break, it's absolutely crazy that there hasn't been any baseball.
And so how crazy is it going to be when you go back without fans in the stands? I think the big question, you are going to be in the broadcast booth for home games. What about road games?
We'll be in the same broadcast booth for the road games too, at Globe Life Field. The difference is we'll be working off of TV monitors rather than actually watching the game on the field. And that's really going to be a challenge. I've never done anything like that before. You know, I use the monitor a little bit when I'm doing the broadcast, especially the stadiums in the National League where the booth is so high, it's really hard to judge the ball, Pittsburgh and Washington and Atlanta. But to actually be completely dependent on the director choosing a good shot is going to be a challenge. I think it'll be fun, and I hope people realize that we're not going to be able to do as much description as we normally do. It might sound a little more like a TV broadcast than a radio broadcast. We'll just have to play it by ear, but it's going to be an adventure. The way I'm looking at the whole thing, Bill, is it's going to be a strange and unique adventure that hopefully we're never going to have to do again. And it's going to be interesting, if nothing else.
What about the challenges, the home game? Because, you know, the fans are very much a part of the broadcast, the culture, the crowd noise during a radio broadcast. How strange will that be? And more importantly, how much are you looking forward, at least, to being calling games in this new ballpark?
Well, it looks like the Rangers are going to use a crowd noise program and actually pipe it into the stadium so that the players hear it also. It sounds great. I've heard it on a couple of the intra-squad games already that have been streamed on TexasRangers.com. As long as the operator of that system is on the ball and watching and knows the game, and Michael Gruber, who's doing it for the Rangers, is spectacular, it's going to sound like a real game. And that was a real concern when we first started talking about doing this with no fans, that it would sound like you're sitting in a studio making believe there's a baseball game. So I'm not concerned about the crowd noise at all. Going into the new stadium is always a really fascinating experience. You know, there are things that have to get worked out in the actual booth itself, getting used to the sight lines so you can judge the ball off the bat, and realizing how much you can actually see in terms of players' body language and the other things that you like to see. That takes a while, and it's always a lot of fun.
All right, a 60-game season. It's crazy to think about, but a 60-game season. What are your anticipations in such a short season?
Approaching it as if every team is 51 and 51. You know, with 60 games left to play, every team is in the race. And with only 60 games, you know, I think it's obvious that managers are going to manage more to win today rather than worrying about the long haul. I think you'll see managers going to the bullpen faster. I think you'll see more moves earlier in the game, both in terms of pinch hitters and pinch runners and things like that, as well as obviously more pitching changes. I think you may see more time between pitches since there's more on the line. I think the players will be treating it more as if it's a playoff game. And every game has 2.5 times more importance than it normally does. And I think you're going to see a lot of players start every game, which you normally wouldn't do. Like if Elvis Andrus is healthy, I would anticipate he starts every game. Joey Gallo, I would imagine, starts every game. Danny Santana, every game, if he's healthy. And I think the workload is going to be different, for the mainstay players. It's going to be a very heavy workload for those 2 months.
So the old baseball adage that you're going to win 50 games, you're going to lose 50 games. It's how you do in the other 62 games, or 60 games in this case. That's really holding true this year.
Maybe 20, 20, and 20 this time, what you do in the middle of 20 games. You look at these 60-game stretches that teams have had. Obviously last year at the beginning of the season, you look at what the Washington Nationals did. They were, I think, 27-33. They went on to win the World Series. The Rangers were a few games over 500 after 60 games. But even if you pull 60 games out of the middle of a season, even the bad teams have a 60-game stretch where they have a winning record somewhere in the season. And if the Tigers or the Orioles or one of these teams not expected to be any good has that stretch right at the beginning, they're right in the middle of the playoff hunt the last week of the season.
So how do you think the Rangers are set up for this? I think that with the starting rotation, with the veterans in their starting rotation, that gives them a leg up on a lot of teams. What do you think?
I think so too. Teams that have knockout, lockdown bullpens with a lot of relievers who fall into that category have an advantage in that they can start wheeling guys in the fourth or fifth inning. But not that many teams are that deep in the bullpen. The Rangers have the depth in the starting rotation. And apparently the 5 starters have done a pretty good job of staying stretched out during the 4-month hiatus as they're out there throwing 6 and 7 innings in these intra-squad games. I think the Rangers are in really good shape. I'm very excited about seeing that starting rotation. You're also more likely, I think, to see teams, the Rangers included, perhaps try to get extra starts, for their main guys. For the Rangers, it's the big 3, Kluber and Lynn and Minor. Maybe you maneuver the rotation more than you normally would in a regular season to make sure that each of those guys gets 1 or 2 extra starts.
Over a 2-month period, 60 games, there can be guys who play at an all-star level, maybe young guys before they get exposed in this league. I think we will have a chance to see a lot of people that people don't expect who are going to have all-star type years over this 2-month period. Who on the Rangers team? Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is a guy who was playing well, hitting well in the spring, and apparently now in the intra-squad games, and has, who knows, he may have earned playing time at third base. He's a guy that I can see who can really play at a very high level over a 60-day period.
I think that's right. He's already established as a superb defensive player, an elite defender, at third base and a few other positions. If he can keep hitting the way he did in March and the way he's done in July, obviously, Chris Woodward's got to play him every day. The other guy who falls into that category, I think, is Nick Solak, a guy who was going to be on the team, but without really having a position. And now it appears Willie Calhoun won't be ready to start the season. So Solak is going to get a chance to play every day in left field. If he's hitting when Calhoun comes back, well, Chris Woodward's going to find a way to play him. They're going to find some other position for Solak, like Kiner-Falefa. He plays a lot of positions. So guys like that do have the opportunity, to go on a tear, play for a couple of months. I think last year when Seattle got off to an incredible start, only to finish buried in last in the division, but they were great for the first month or 5 weeks. And it looked like Domingo Santana, was going to be the MVP in the American League. By the end of the season, he wasn't even playing. But for those 60 games, as you say, he played at an all-star level, and just about any major leaguer has the capability of doing that for 2 months.
All right, this downtime has got me reminiscing about baseball. And as you know, I was a Ranger fan from day one in 1972 when the club moved here. But I want to take you down memory lane to the late 70s. We actually have a picture of you when you were the voice of the Hawks, the Dallas Blackhawks in the late 70s. In your bio, Eric has developed a colorful and explosive style of play-by-play through 9 years of experience.
Who do you think wrote that bio?
Well, it does say that Eric Nadel wore many hats back in the days.
Part of the job was being the public relations director, which meant writing every single word that was in the program and in the media guide, such as it was. It was about 12 pages, I think. But I loved doing minor league hockey. You know, my goal, I always tell people, I grew up in New York City. Marv Albert was my idol. He was broadcasting the New York Rangers games on the radio. I tell people my goal was to be the voice of the Rangers. You know, when I prayed at night, I would pray I would be the voice of the Rangers. I just wasn't specific enough as to which Rangers I was talking about.
And so now, over 40 years of calling Ranger games. Okay, I want to go back to one memory in Arlington Stadium. It would be August 1989. As luck would have it, Ricky Henderson comes to the plate, and Nolan Ryan is seeking his 5,000th career strikeout, and you are on the call.
Yeah, I was so excited. You know, back then I did the middle 3 innings. Mark Holtz, who is still the greatest baseball announcer I've ever heard, and I had a chance to work with, did the first 3 innings and the last 3 innings, and he always had the dramatic moments. And just as luck would have it, you know, Nolan got a chance to strike out his 5,000th batter during one of my innings. And I had given it a lot of thought. You know, I didn't want to screw it up. And it worked out great because, you know, back then the games weren't all televised. And my radio call was actually carried nationally on most of the network news shows. It was on the Today Show the next day when my parents got to hear it in New York. It was a great big deal. And, you know, I was planning when the strikeout occurred to just lay out and let the crowd tell the story. But then all the Rangers started running into the mound from their positions on the field, which I'd never seen before. And I felt it was necessary to describe that and then lay back a little bit and let the crowd roar. But that was the big surprise of the whole thing, how the Rangers were going to respond behind Nolan when it happened.
All right, a memory from the ballpark. I'll take you back 10 years ago, and it was the strikeout of ARod to win the American League. And for the first time in franchise history, the Rangers were headed to the World Series. And I went back and listened to it. You laid out for a full 35 seconds on that. My question to you, what were your emotions during those 35 seconds when the crowd was roaring?
I couldn't have spoken during that time. I was so overcome with emotion. And I didn't know that it would happen that way, but the way the stadium exploded, Bill, with the confetti and balloons, and I'd never heard it that loud before, I really was overcome with emotion. I could not have gotten it together to talk before I actually did. As it turned out, that amount of time seemed to me to be about right, you know, to lay out. But that's still, I believe, the most emotional, you know, celebratory moment that I've ever experienced in my life. You know, Rangers going to the World Series, you know, for the first time after all those years. The only thing that would ever compare to that is, you know, when we finally get the last strike and win a World Series.
I get goosebumps just hearing you talk about it. And I remember I was making my way from the left field press box in the ninth inning, just leading up to it. And I had tears welling up in my eyes being a longtime Ranger fan. There's just something about baseball, I think, that brings that emotion out of fans when a moment like that happens.
Yeah, you know, after the game, after our post-game show, I went down and I went into the clubhouse and was given one of those American League champion World Series t-shirts. And I took it home that night, and before I went to bed, I lay it on the floor right next to the bed so that if I woke up in the middle of the night or I woke up the next morning, I would see that thing and realize it wasn't a dream. And fortunately, it wasn't a dream.
Baseball kind of makes kids out of all of us, no matter what our age is. Okay, through this pandemic now, and you not being able to call games, how much over the last few months does it give you an appreciation for the opportunity that you've had over greater than 4 decades now, and just an itch to get back calling games again?
Yeah, it's a good question. It really did make me appreciate how lucky I am to do what I do. I'm always grateful. I'm consciously grateful every time I walk into the ballpark, but especially given the labor strife and all that went on between the players and the owners, and seeing how frustrated the fans were. It gave me a deeper appreciation of how important baseball is in people's lives. And whether or not you think that's right, that's the way it is. And, people who are friends of mine, musicians who are incredibly talented, to me, these people are creative geniuses. They're living and dying on the negotiations between the players and the owners, and when they can get baseball started again. And, people in all walks of life writing about what baseball means to them and how much they miss it. It's, we've been through strikes before. I went through the strike in '81 where the middle third of the season disappeared. And of course, the strike in '94 when the World Series got canceled. This was different though, because the season never got started. And so you went from last October, all the way to April, ready for baseball to start. And then it didn't happen. And, people just missed it so much that it did make a big impression on me.
Okay, before I let you go, everyone knows that you're a big music lover. What's on Eric Nadel's playlist right now?
Well, the last couple of weeks have been fantastic for new releases. This week in particular, the Chicks used to be the Dixie Chicks. We've been waiting forever, for their latest album. So, here it is, released on Friday. Last week, Margot Price released a new album. I've been spending a lot of time listening to that. It's been a few good weeks for releases. Joshua Ray Walker, a local talent who's going to be a huge star, released an album last week. For the first couple of months of the pandemic, groups were not releasing their album. In fact, the Chicks held back on theirs for a few months, figuring, well, we can't go out and tour to support the album. And I was watching a lot of, streaming shows and shows on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. But now they're actually putting the albums out again. So, I've been listening to one new album after another. My Morning Jacket is another band I really like that just put out a new record last week.
And this coming from someone who hosted a Daphne Willis concert in his own living room in Durango, Colorado, just last summer, right?
We've done it with Daphne in Durango. We've done it with Daphne in Dallas. She's had a couple of new songs come out during the course of the pandemic.
All right. And finally, your signature home run call, that ball is history. Here's the call I want to hear very soon. That virus is history.
Now that would be cause for celebration. Now, I'm looking forward to that one.
All right, Eric. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you at the new ballpark at Arlington.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Great to see you.